Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dana Ali, and this screencast is going to be on culturally relevant teaching from Chapter 3 from Dr. Pan's book. And we were asked to explain what this is and how we would use it in our classroom. So let's start by explaining what culturally relevant teaching is. CRT can be defined as an approach to instruction founded on the belief in equity and education and value of social justice. Culturally relevant teaching is built on the social cultural theoretical framework as developed by Lev Vygotsky. He was a Russian psychologist, as well as others such as Carol D. Lee, Vera Johnsteiner, Barbara Rugoff, and Michael Coe, who are cross-cultural psychologists. And this is cited from Dr. Pan's book, page 75. Cognitive learning theory is at the center of culturally relevant teaching and is something that all teachers must consider. This theory explains how students learn and develop, and it helps teachers infer on which instructional strategies will be able to reach their student population more effectively. Cognitive learning theory also talks about how culture impacts the way that children learn and develop. As defined by psychologist Carol D. Lee, cognition is defined as problem solving and thinking. It is the psychological principles and research that should be defining factors that teachers consider when choosing the most meaningful instructional strategies to help students make connections to the curriculum. It should not be the curriculum that we considered before any of this. There's an example that stems from research on how it has shown that African American children, for example, learn best through hearing and telling stories and not necessarily other modalities. So it gave a great example that maybe their benchmark or their performance task, maybe not the benchmark, but the performance task at the end of the unit could be somewhat of a presentation perhaps. So when I was thinking about how to answer the prompt that we were given, I started to think about cultural modeling, because what is cultural modeling? It is when teachers take knowledge that their students have, depending on what communities they're raised in, what culture they're raised in, and teachers use that and incorporate it into the lessons to make it more meaningful for the student. So as teachers, we should incorporate student knowledge of the outside world, experiences, and cultural tools basically into the lesson. Some of these cultural tools and social and cultural knowledge that students carry within them are home language, expectations such as, are they expected to go to college or not? Are the expectations different from them, from their family? What are the values that they hold to highest regards? Who are their role models? It could be some famous role models, like Dr. Luther King, but it could also be just family friends, family stories that they were told, or if they constantly talk about an aunt or their dad and how they admire them, or their grandma. Community issues that they consider important, but also in this would fit things like, are they part of the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts? Are they part of any sports? So when I think back to the sixth grade class that I just graduated, I had a pretty large Filipino population within my classroom. I think it was kind of 50% Filipino and 50% Mexican. So then I started to brainstorm on what things I could have used for them to incorporate culturally relevant materials that would make my lessons even more meaningful to them. So the first thing that I came up with was to create a bilingual chart with cognates. I already use cognates for the English learners and the Spanish learners, but it's between English and Spanish. So to that, I could incorporate Tagalog into my cognate chart for that large Filipino population. Because I know a lot of them, their first language was Tagalog or is Tagalog, so that could help those kiddos. Also, when teaching about like ecosystem, there's a unit halfway through the year that we have to teach ecosystems. Instead of just teaching maybe the U.S., I could pull information and teach myself so that I can then present it to them, ecosystems from the cities and areas where my students originate from, and especially those that they have visited, because that would make it more meaningful. Also, when teaching about renewable energy, which I do towards the end of the year, I can research about what renewable energy sources are being used in the countries that they originate from. And also when teaching about idioms, I do teach about some in Spanish and in English and relate those, but I can also incorporate some Filipinos or Tagalog ones.